Okay. Episode 2000. I love it. This one's deep and it's really making me think about some things. So what you're about to see is Duncan Trussell. He's giving his depiction or his insights into the book One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Now, this is a movie that I have not seen, and it's a book I have not read, but when I hear him talk about this, it really makes me think of us, of people. And I want, while you're listening to this, I want you to think of society, okay? I want you to think of human beings and society as you're listening to him talk about what he feels the meaning of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is, okay? I want you to just think of that. Don't forget, like the video. It helps so much. You have no idea. Boost us out of the shadow realm. CoachColin.com. I am CoachColin.com. We got the Soul Not For Sale stuff. We got the anti-WEF stuff. And we have the Great Resist stuff. All of this stuff can be found at IamCoachColin.com. If you put in the discount code area, I am Coach Colin, all one word, all capitals, you will receive 10% off. And if you have bought anything from our site, thank you so much. You have no idea how much I appreciate it, how much my wife appreciates it. And I'm sure if the baby could talk and move around, the baby would be appreciative too. Let's get into the actual clip.
No, that's the original Marshall. That's a wolf. That's what's crazy, that used to be a wolf.
Right.
That someone took the most ferocious, predatory beast of the forest that operates in packs and they communicate telepathically. Yeah. And they turned that thing into this adorable love sponge. Dude,
okay. When was the last time, this connects, when was the last time you read One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Oh, it's been a long time.
Okay. I think I must have read it when I was in high school and just didn't pay attention. It's completely different from the movie, like 100% different.
Oh, maybe I never read it.
Ken Kesey, he was like...
Ken Kesey wrote it?
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
So it's so psychedelic. The book is so psychedelic, but, you know, like the idea is that the character McMurphy, Jack Nicholson's character... And again, this is my own analysis. I don't know what the actual like literary analysis of it is. He represents an undomesticated human. And the people in the ward are humans that couldn't function in what he calls society the combine. They couldn't function in the combine, so they're being brought into the asylums to get like re-domesticated so they could function in the combine. And he represents like an undomesticated human who enters into like a conditioning center designed to melt people back down, build them back up, and send them out into the world and be good, functioning, domesticated humans. It's so good. It's so subversive, dude. It's such a brilliant, like, it's so funny how different the movie is from it. Like, like Nurse Ratched. And again, because the narrator is Chief, the big Native American dude who's in the movie, that's the narrator of the book. It's being told from his perspective. So you don't know like how much of what he's reporting is real and how much is like he's in a mental asylum, right?
Oh my God, that's amazing.
I know, it's so good. But according to him, Nurse Ratched can control time. She'll speed up time so that like a year goes by in a day, or slow down time so that like a second lasts like 10 years. And that's just one of the many ways that she's basically torturing the people in the ward.
Oh my God.
She's constantly giving them drugs, tying them to their beds, and always this threat. This like threat is hovering, which is if you fuck up too much, if you get too angry at Nurse Ratched, who is a monster, essentially the way he describes it, it's the demiurge, just the Antichrist, then you know what happens? They're going to fucking give you a lobotomy. They're going to cut out your brain, turn you into a zombie.
And you know they really did that.
Yeah.
They really did that.
They really did that.
They really did that.
I had a professor in college who used to work at an asylum and was the weirdest dude ever. It was an awful class on like psychiatry. And he was kind of talking glowingly about lobotomies. And like someone asked him like, I mean, what happened to the person? And he goes, they became a very good patient.
Oh my God.
Totally was fine with the fact that they were like sticking chopsticks in people's brains, severing the
brain.
Dude, it's with a hammer, wearing that weird outfit. Why are they dressed like that?
And they did a lot of those.
This guy did most of them. He did it. This doctor is credited with the majority of them.
So are they holding this guy down while they're doing this, or is he anesthetized?
I don't know.
I don't see any
I see
anesthesia.
a strap.
I see straps, and I see people holding his arms. Jesus Christ. You know how fucking terrifying that must be to feel that rod going into your brain and knowing they're going to turn you into a vegetable?
Yeah. Electroshock.
Dude, do you remember that guy that was running for vice president who had to admit that he went through electroshock therapy?
No.
Yes. It was during the McGovern Nixon campaign. Eagleton. It was McGovern's campaign, right?
Yeah.
McGovern was like one of the last hopes. He was one of the last, like, truly rational, what you really want out of someone that you consider a liberal, someone who's a compassionate, strong person who people thought that, he could win. They thought that he could win.
Yeah.
And it says 72, over 2 weeks after the 1972 Democratic Convention, Eagleton admitted the truth of news reports that he had received electroshock therapy for clinical depression during the 1960s. McGovern initially said he would back Eagleton 100%, 1,000% but he didn't. He eventually had to let him go. And then it was too late.
Wait, that's what took him out?
That's what took him out.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Holy
Electroshock
shit.
therapy for depression. Just for depression.
Don't people say it works?
You would be awarded if you had depression today. Today in this victimhood society,
Oh, right.
if you said this vice president, he suffered from clinical depression, but he sought help, he would be a shining example. Look at him.
Yeah.
He's like us. He was clinically depressed. He got over it. He's a hero.
Yeah.
And then people would be fine with it.
Yeah, back then.
Back then, it was a giant sign of weakness.
See how weird is that? I'll start from where they just left off, but like again, think of society. Think of how society works and how it kind of pushes us. Like how a slaughterhouse kind of has a certain way that it guides the cattle, and it's like calming to them for some reason, and they're able to just walk right to the slaughter kind of thing. It's like society has that same type of thing. Even like I'll start at the where they just left off. But think about that. The guy got the electroshock therapy. They probably said, this is the best thing for you to do. Mental health is important. You should deal with your mental health issues. Let us help you. Then they help him. Then they also look at him and say, well, you can't. You're not fit to run for governor. You can't be a part of the government now. Sorry, it wasn't governor, but you can't be a part of the government now. You've had that done to you. All of a sudden, he's shamed for doing that. But beforehand, when he was sitting in the chair, they were like, yeah, this is the best thing for you to do. How many times has that happened to us today in society? You should deal with your mental health, but if you have too many mental health issues, well, you shouldn't be able to buy a firearm now. Well, I don't know if I want them around my kids, but I was supposed to talk about my mental health. I was supposed to be honest about it. Well, what happened? Well, you were honest about it, and now we know. And now we can't have you doing certain things, but it's like, but I dealt with it. People that go to jail, you're supposed to go to jail and become rehabilitated, and now you're a functional member of society. But then also it's like, well, I don't want you working at my company. No, you can't work at my company either. It's like, but I went through the thing. I did the thing. Well, very, very interesting to think about. But think about society. And how they have this way of domesticating us, domesticating people. And I go back to what Joe said at the beginning of this clip when he was referring to his dog. He was talking about how they used to be wolves. They were this crazy, predatorial, strong, could work telepathically, and they got domesticated into these little dogs, into chihuahuas, for God's sake. It really makes me think of people. If if people are left alone, left away from Wi-Fi, left away from constant bombarding of not just radiation from phones and whatnot, but just away from social media in general, and they get put into places, not a forest like you're some animal, but you get put into a place like a homestead where there is no electronics really, like almost like a Mennonite or an Amish person. You get put into that atmosphere, and now you have to build, and all of a sudden your dopamine doesn't come from seeing naked girls online, but your dopamine comes from knowing that you helped build this house, knowing that you helped, catch this meal, make this butter, roll this hay, work on a farm, And that would be considered now, for where we are right now, that would be considered feral, undomesticated. And they want you domesticated as much as possible. And here's the thing, right? So you can think about what people were, and you can think about where we are now, but you have to have the thought process of the domestication process is ongoing. So what are they domesticating us for now? What are they pushing us towards now? Now, a lot of people talk about the transhumanism, not transgender, but transhumanism talk about how we're all supposed to merge with machines. I'm sure if you look at ads and you're on social media enough, I'm sure you've probably heard the sentence or seen the sentence written down. If you don't use AI, you're going to be left behind. I've seen that many times, and it makes me think, it's like, well, left behind what? What if, and I've said this so many times, what if me and millions of people don't want to do that? We're going to get left behind? What does that mean? What if there's enough of us to fill 10 small towns? We're all going to get left behind? What are you talking about? And who's going to leave us behind? Everyone else? So are you going to leave us alone, or what happens from there? Like where does this domestication process end? Is it the chips in the hand? Because we've already seen that. That's a real thing. You can look that up. People are using chips in their hand to access their workplace. It's a real thing. It's not made up. And Elon Musk right now is experimenting with chips in people's brains. He's gotten approved by the FDA to actually start human trials. So now he's putting in human brains. Is that the domestication that's happening? Am I and anybody like me who wants to drive a gas car and not have my electronics embedded under my skin and doesn't want to go through with submitting to a new level of surveillance where they're tracking my biometrics? Will I be seen as feral? Will I be seen as a caveman? Will I be seen as some Mennonite type person, Amish type person? Who's wandering in the wilderness, not willing to take on all the modifications that are going to be available to human beings? Like, how far does this domestication process go? It really makes me think. I don't know about you, but it's something there. You had school. School was like that. It's very domesticating. You're a wild kid. You want to just run around. You want to be free. You want to have your feet in the grass. You want to have your bare feet touching the grass. You want to climb trees. You want to do all this stuff. And then all of a sudden you get put into these sterile classrooms, cold sterile classrooms, and you're supposed to just sit there. You're supposed to get used to sitting there for 8 hours. Not straight, but you're supposed, and even more so domestication. You're supposed to get used to sitting there for a couple hours. And when the bell goes off, only then can you stand up and run around. And you will go into that field and run around. And when the bell goes off again, you should intuitively, no one should have to tell you, because that's a bad kid. You should intuitively come back to the class and sit for a few more hours and answer the questions when you're asked, and only when you're asked. Do not speak unless you're spoken to. It's a domestication process. And then from there, you're going to go to another school, possibly another school, if you're lucky. Only if you've done well in the first 2 rounds of schooling. Only if you've shown that you can sit there long enough and you can answer the questions and write them down and memorize exactly what we tell you, and write it down on this paper. And if I see that you've gotten enough of it right, well, then you can get into the higher levels of school. And if you can't, well, then you have to go to work. which is another domestication process. So now all of a sudden, it's the same thing, and you're kind of used to it for some reason. You got to do whatever you're here to do for a certain amount of hours, just a couple hours, then the bell goes off. It's break time. Used to be recess, but now it's break time. See how that domestication thing happens? That conditioning thing happens? And now you're out in your car, you're talking with some people, you know, it's adult recess. Now the bell goes off again, right back to work. No one should have to tell you. I don't want to have to tell you to come back. You know you're supposed to come back. You heard the bell. How far does it go? It really makes me think. How far is it going to go? How much are we going to have to learn, memorize, and stay in line? Because it seems like the line gets more narrow and more narrow and more narrow that we have to stay in. The confines, the parameters that we have to stay in, that we have to think in. Getting narrower and narrower and narrower. I'm saying that word weird. But it's getting very narrow. You know what I mean? Compliance. It's been happening for a long time. And the people who don't go along with all of it, well, we have categories for all of you. You can be a conspiracy theorist, or you can be a loser, or you can be uneducated. You can be a factory worker. You could be someone who's not that intelligent. You could be a weirdo. You could be a nut job. You can be a racist. You could be, why is the word? Andrew Tate. What's that word? Misogynistic. You can be that. You can be a criminal. You know, as soon as you fall outside of that narrow little track, you have all those things that you could be. And then if you stay outside of that track long enough, we'll pick you up and you'll go through another domestication process, which would be incarceration. And now you're going to find that you're a little used to it for some reason. You get to sit here and you're not allowed to do much. And then a bell's going to go off, and then you can go around in your little field for a little while. When the bell goes off again, you better get inside. And this time, there's no threat of not passing a class. There's no threat of getting fired. You will be brought back in with force. You're going to get used to it. And we call that rehabilitation. Very, very interesting. I've let this go on a little too long. I'll say it again, like the video. It helps a lot, boosts me out of the shadow realm. But what do you think when you hear that explanation of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? And maybe you've read the book and maybe you've seen the movie. He says that the book is nothing like the movie. So if you've read the book, I'd love to hear what you think about that. If it does seem like the main character is an undomesticated human who's being domesticated inside of this facility, let me know in the comments. Other than that, I'm out.